What if I told you that some of the most dangerous strokes don't happen during moments of stress, anger, or physical exertion, but quietly, while you're asleep? That idea alone makes many people uncomfortable because it challenges what we've been taught to believe about stroke risk. Over the years, I've met countless older adults who thought they were doing everything right. Their cholesterol numbers were under control. Their blood tests looked reassuring. Some of them were even told they were in great shape for their age. And yet, a stroke still happened suddenly, silently, often without any clear warning signs beforehand. Stroke is now one of the most common and life-altering health events in people over the age of 60. What makes it especially frightening is not just how severe it can be, but how often it strikes people who don't feel sick at all. No dramatic symptoms, no obvious red flags, just quiet changes building beneath the surface, sometimes for years. My name is Dr. James Wilson. I'm a physician with more than 20 years of experience working in cardiovascular and neurological health, with a long-standing focus on stroke prevention in older adults. And if there's one lesson those years have taught me, it's that cholesterol alone does not tell the full story. In this video, I'm going to share 6 silent risk factors that I see again and again in my practice, factors that quietly increase the risk of stroke even when cholesterol looks normal. And I want you to stay with me until the end, because the last one is the most overlooked, the most underestimated, and the one that I've seen trigger strokes in people who truly believed they were completely safe. Once you understand these risks, you'll begin to see why some strokes seem to come out of nowhere, and more importantly, what can actually be done to reduce that risk before it's too late. Let's start with the first one. One of the first silent risks I pay close attention to in older patients is something most people have never heard their doctor mention directly. Increased blood viscosity, often described simply as thicker blood, especially at night. As we age, our blood naturally changes. Hydration levels fluctuate more easily. Red blood cells become less flexible. Plasma volume can decrease. The result is blood that doesn't flow as smoothly as it once did. During the daytime, movement and gravity help compensate for this. But at night, when you're lying still for hours, circulation slows, and that thickness matters. I've seen patients with perfectly normal cholesterol who wake up feeling heavy-headed, slightly dizzy, or mentally foggy in the morning. Many brush it off as poor sleep or aging, but when I look closer, I often find that their blood is simply moving too sluggishly overnight, increasing the likelihood of tiny clots forming or blood flow briefly dropping in delicate areas of the brain. What makes this especially dangerous is that it doesn't cause pain. There's no alarm bell. Blood viscosity doesn't always show up clearly on standard cholesterol panels, so people assume everything is fine. Meanwhile, the brain, which is extremely sensitive to even short disruptions in circulation, is quietly under strain. This risk becomes even more pronounced after 60 because nighttime dehydration is common. You're not drinking water for hours, and if you limit fluids to avoid nighttime bathroom trips, blood can become even more concentrated by morning. The good news is that this is one of the most modifiable risks I see. Simple habits, such as proper hydration earlier in the evening, light movement during the day, and avoiding heavy alcohol intake at night, can make a meaningful difference in how well blood flows while you sleep. And this brings us directly to the second silent danger, one that often works hand in hand with thicker blood and puts even more stress on the aging brain. The second silent risk I see far too often is nighttime oxygen deprivation. And what surprises most people is that you don't need severe sleep apnea for this to become dangerous. As we get older, breathing during sleep naturally becomes lighter and more shallow. The muscles that keep the airway open relax more easily, lung capacity decreases slightly, and the brain's sensitivity to low oxygen changes. For many people over 60, oxygen levels dip just enough during the night to matter, but not enough to wake them up or cause dramatic symptoms. I've had patients tell me, "I sleep through the night, but I wake up exhausted." Others describe morning headaches, brain fog, or a strange sense of pressure behind the eyes. When we look deeper, we often discover repeated mild drops in oxygen that occurred while they were sleeping. The brain depends on a constant, steady supply of oxygen. Even small reductions, if they happen night after night, can irritate blood vessels, increase inflammation, and make the brain far more vulnerable to stroke. When this low oxygen state combines with thicker blood, which we just discussed, the risk quietly multiplies. What makes this especially concerning is how invisible it can be. Standard checkups don't measure oxygen during sleep. Cholesterol tests don't reveal it, so people assume nothing is wrong, while their brain is under subtle stress for 6, 7, or 8 hours every night. This is why I take morning symptoms seriously, even when daytime tests look normal. Waking up groggy, mentally slow, or with frequent headaches is not just getting older. It's often the body's way of saying the brain didn't get what it needed overnight, and unfortunately, reduced oxygen during sleep also sets the stage for another major danger: sudden changes in blood pressure at night, which is exactly what we'll talk about next. The third silent risk is one that often shocks people when they finally understand it: sudden spikes in blood pressure during the night. I can't tell you how many patients have said to me, "But my blood pressure is fine every time it's checked." And during the day, that may be completely true. What many people don't realize is that blood pressure behaves very differently at night, especially after the age of 60. As the body moves through sleep cycles, the nervous system shifts, hormones fluctuate, and blood vessels are supposed to relax. But in many older adults, that process becomes unstable. Instead of gently dipping, blood pressure can surge unexpectedly while they're asleep. This is particularly dangerous because the brain's blood vessels are most vulnerable during deep sleep. They're less able to respond quickly to sudden pressure changes. When a nighttime spike occurs, fragile vessels may stretch, weaken, or in some cases, rupture. In others, the sudden pressure can dislodge plaque or trigger clot formation, setting the stage for a stroke that seems to happen out of the blue. I often hear subtle clues when I ask the right questions. People describe waking up suddenly with their heart racing, sweating at night, vivid or disturbing dreams, or a pounding sensation in the chest or head. These are not just sleep disturbances, they're often signs of nighttime blood pressure instability. What makes this risk especially deceptive is that standard clinic measurements don't capture it. A normal reading at noon doesn't reflect what happens at 2 or 3 in the morning, so people feel reassured when they shouldn't be. When nighttime blood pressure spikes combine with reduced oxygen and thicker blood, the strain on the brain multiplies. And that brings us to the next silent danger, one that affects how the heart moves blood in the first place. The fourth silent risk is something many people dismiss because it doesn't feel dramatic, mild, but chronic heart rhythm irregularities. I'm not talking only about obvious conditions like atrial fibrillation that are easy to detect. I'm referring to subtle rhythm disturbances that happen quietly, often at night, and go unnoticed for years. As we age, the electrical system of the heart becomes less stable. The signals that coordinate each heartbeat may slow slightly, misfire briefly, or pause for just a fraction of a second. Most people don't feel pain. Some notice an occasional flutter, a skipped beat, or a strange hollow sensation in the chest when they're lying still at night. Many ignore it completely. What concerns me is not the sensation itself, but what it does to blood flow. When the heart rhythm becomes irregular, even mildly, blood doesn't move as smoothly through the chambers. Instead of flowing steadily, it can pool momentarily, especially in certain areas of the heart. And when blood pools, it has more time to clot. I've seen patients with normal cholesterol, normal daytime blood pressure, and no major symptoms suffer a stroke that was later traced back to these quiet rhythm disturbances. They never knew their heart wasn't pumping efficiently during rest. No warning lights ever came on. This risk becomes more dangerous when combined with the factors we've already discussed: thicker blood, reduced oxygen, and nighttime blood pressure spikes. Together, they create the perfect conditions for a clot to form silently and travel to the brain. That's why I always take nighttime symptoms seriously. Feeling your heart pause, flutter, or beat unevenly when you're lying in bed is not something to casually dismiss as anxiety or aging. It's information your body is offering. And unfortunately, the next risk factor makes the blood vessels themselves even more vulnerable to damage, even when everything else seems under control. The fifth silent risk is one that almost never causes obvious symptoms, yet it quietly weakens blood vessels over time: chronic vascular inflammation. This is one of the most misunderstood contributors to stroke risk, especially in older adults with good lab results. Inflammation in blood vessels doesn't usually announce itself with pain or fever. Instead, it slowly irritates and damages the inner lining of the arteries. Over years, that lining becomes less smooth, less flexible, and more prone to tiny tears. When that happens, blood clots are more likely to form, even if cholesterol levels appear normal. I've treated many patients who were shocked to learn this. They exercised regularly, avoided fatty foods, and kept their numbers in range. What they didn't realize was that chronic stress, poor sleep, repeated blood pressure fluctuations, and long-standing metabolic strain can keep blood vessels in a constant low-grade inflammatory state. After 60, blood vessels lose some of their natural resilience. Inflammation accelerates that process. It makes arteries more fragile and more reactive to sudden changes in pressure or oxygen levels. That's why a stroke can occur seemingly out of nowhere. The vessel was already weakened long before the event itself. What concerns me most is how quietly this develops. Routine cholesterol panels don't measure vascular inflammation directly. Many people are reassured by normal results while the underlying damage continues unnoticed. This is also why lifestyle factors matter far more than most people are told. Chronic tension, disrupted sleep, and ongoing physiological stress don't just affect how you feel. They directly influence the health of your blood vessels, and when inflamed, fragile vessels are exposed to thickened blood, low oxygen, blood pressure spikes, or irregular heart rhythms. The margin for safety becomes dangerously thin. The final risk factor ties all of this together, and it's one that nearly every older adult underestimates. The sixth and final silent risk is one that almost everyone underestimates: poor, deep sleep and the brain's failure to properly clear waste overnight. This is the factor I've seen surprise people the most, because many assume that as long as they're in bed for 7 or 8 hours, their brain is getting the rest it needs. But sleep is not just about duration. It's about depth. During deep sleep, the brain activates a remarkable cleanup process. Waste products, inflammatory byproducts, and damaged proteins are flushed away through specialized fluid pathways. This process helps protect brain cells, maintain healthy blood vessels, and keep circulation stable. When deep sleep is disrupted or shortened, that cleanup simply doesn't happen efficiently. After the age of 60, deep sleep naturally becomes more fragile. Hormonal changes, nighttime awakenings, medications, stress, and breathing disturbances all reduce the amount of restorative sleep the brain receives. Many of my patients tell me, "I sleep, but I don't feel rested." That statement alone tells me something important is being missed. When waste products accumulate in the brain, inflammation increases. Blood vessels become more reactive and less resilient. The brain's tolerance for fluctuations in blood pressure or oxygen drops dramatically. Over time, this creates a perfect environment for stroke, not suddenly, but gradually. What makes this risk especially dangerous is how normal it feels. People accept poor sleep as part of aging. They normalize waking up tired, foggy, or mentally slow. But these are often signs that the brain has not fully recovered overnight. I've seen patients reduce their stroke risk significantly by improving sleep quality alone, not with medication, but by addressing nighttime habits, sleep timing, breathing, and consistency. When the brain finally gets the deep sleep it needs, everything else becomes more stable. And now that you understand all 6 silent risks, it's time to bring the full picture together and talk about what truly matters moving forward. Before we end, I want to speak to you not just as a doctor, but as someone who has spent more than 20 years sitting across from patients just like you. If there is one message I hope you take away from this video, it's this: stroke rarely happens out of nowhere. In most cases, the body has been sending quiet signals for a long time. The problem is that we're often taught to look at only one number, one test, one risk factor, and we miss the bigger picture. In my experience, protecting the brain after 60 is not about fear. It's about awareness. Small, consistent adjustments, better sleep, Attention to nighttime symptoms, managing stress, and listening to your body can make a meaningful difference over time. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to start paying attention in the right places. That said, I want to be very clear about something important. Everything I've shared in this video is based on my clinical experience and on information compiled from trusted medical sources, but it is meant for educational purposes only. This video is not a diagnosis, and it is not a substitute for medical care. Every person's health situation is unique. If you recognize any of these risk factors in yourself, or if something you heard today concerns you, the most responsible step is to speak directly with a qualified physician or visit a medical facility where proper evaluation and testing can be done. Early conversations save lives. Ignoring quiet warning signs does not. My hope is that this video helps you ask better questions, notice subtle changes, and take your health seriously, not out of fear, but out of respect for the life and clarity you deserve in the years ahead. Take care of yourself and don't walk this path alone.